Hey everybody, welcome back to Everyday Journey. Today we're going to try to finish this thing up. This is the base that I made for my my grinder, and what I'm actually using it as is a grinder jig, so that we can actually kind of use it like a chop saw. I'm going to use I think it's a 3.5 or 4 inch, maybe 4.5 inch grinder, hand grinder, and I'm going to attach it to this and have it to where it's on a track and can actually slide through here and actually make good cuts. Hopefully nice straight ones, and hopefully a lot easier than doing it by hand. Just a quick update, you can see right here I got a whole bunch of screw heads right here going across the top. Just like down here, if you saw in the previous video, which I think is up here in the corner, you can check that out after. But this thing actually, the glue wasn't holding. Something about how slick this, this outside laminate, I guess it would be, or coating or whatever that's on this wood, it just doesn't like to glue up very well. So what I end up doing is just go ahead and drill a whole bunch of holes here, put some screws in it, and it just holds this stuff together. Because it was kind of separating here on the end, and now it shouldn't have any problem whatsoever. But that's all I've done so far. Let's see what else we can do. So, as I said before, I'm actually going to try my best anyway to use this stuff that came from a garage door opener that somebody had given me. And what I'm going to end up doing is, where the garage door track, if you can see this here, where it bolted together, it had this piece that went over the top, and actually would bolt two sides of it together so it would make a long continuous track. I'm going to try to use the track itself. And this was the case. This is one that actually had a chain that went around it. Here's one of the pulleys or the wheels for the chain. But I'm going to use this to try to mount. I think I'm going to mount it like so on top. Of course, it's T-shaped, as you can see. And I'm going to try to mount the bottom part of the T. Flip it sideways and mount it to the top of this. That'll give me a track going across the top just like this, and give me a place to screw down into my my base here. Then I'm going to do the same thing on the bottom, but I believe I'm going to have to make, this is a shorter piece, but I believe I'm going to have to make do some cutting on it, because I got to actually make it go back to the back of this. So in order to do that, I got to take out part of this so that it makes up, so that it goes across this nice and easily. It won't be mounted back here, but it's not going to matter because it's going to be mounted several times up through the front here, plus on the top too. So it shouldn't be an issue. And I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use some of this, which I've actually already got a piece that I cut in half to a shorter section. I think I'm just going to have it right on top like that, so it'll slide across the top just like so. This is something you could do this way. If you needed to, you could use angle iron. That would go across the top and angle up. That would work great. As far as these go, you would probably have to bend something in order to go over the top of it, or find some way to make some wheels or something that went across it. And you can use different things for that. I've seen people make little aluminum wheels or little plastic wheels or whatever, or even something like rollerblading wheels put on top of there. And all they got to do is keep it from sliding off of this and right on top of this. So, those would work great. If you had some of these, this is something somebody gave me, and it would probably work just fine. But since I'm trying to use recycled stuff, and I want to save these for something else, these are actually drawer slides. And I'm sure this would work great. Put on here and slide back and forth. The only issue I see is that it maybe wouldn't go back far enough, but it just depends on how you put it on. But because I said I'm going to do it out of this, I'm going to do it out of this. So let's see how we can do it. First I need to do is go ahead and take a measurement across the top here so that I can cut my pieces to go across the top. And I've got several of these. Here's another piece right here. So I got plenty to work with. I just got to make sure that it's nice and straight. I think I saw a piece that was actually warped a little bit, so I just had to make sure it's straight. But cut out my pieces to go on the top and the bottom. Cut the top one first, bottom one we'll get to in a minute because we're going to have to do some extra trimming. So let's find that and start doing some cutting. Alright, so here's our first cut right here. And this is the reason why I'm trying to make this, is because cuts like this are hard to do by hand because you got to go through here and then go through here, but you have to kind of do them at the same time. And to have a jig, something like that to work with is much better. I just need another one the same size. Alright, so now I got two equal pieces. My next thing is I'm actually just going to mark this. We'll go ahead and make this piece that's already got some holes in it. We'll go ahead and use those holes. This piece over here, this side over here doesn't have any holes, so I'm going to need to cut some out so that it fits on this bottom part. We're going to cut it from the side without the holes. That way I don't have to drill any extra holes. So we're just going to put it up here and eyeball it. We're going to mark it just a little bigger. That way, even if I don't get it perfect, it'll still fit over like it should. And we'll go ahead and cut this part out. It's basically going to be straight up like this, and then all of this right here will get cut off. So we'll just leave this top part here, the top part of the T. So then I need to actually drill a bunch of holes in the part right here, I guess the lower part of the T. We need to drill a bunch of holes in here, just like this, so that we can mount it to here. And we need to do that both with the bottom piece, which this one will be, and this one here, same thing, will be the top piece. And that way we actually have some holes to be able to mount it with. After that, then I'm going to use this piece here, like I said before, to slide on the top and bottom. And in order for that to attach to anything over here, I actually am going to put some flathead screws, flathead bolts. By flathead I mean like that right there, so that whenever they're through, they'll actually be sticking out this side, but they won't interfere on the inside of this. Problem I have though is that these holes are not big enough for my countersink bit. So I'm actually going to have to drill out one side of this a little so that this countersink fits through, and then countersink the other side so that my flathead will sit in there without interfering with anything. So that's what I'm going to do. You can just sit back and watch. Alright, so to quickly mark out some holes, I'm just taking this piece and just move it down, mark it, same thing, mark it, and we'll go ahead and put another one towards the end just to make sure. And do the same thing on the other piece. Now you see I'm using my drill press / mill. But for those who don't have one, there's no reason why you can't use a hand drill for this. I would definitely use it, put it in a vise though, because when it catches, it will catch and kick back. Be a pretty good problem. So now we just need to punch our holes. And like I said, nothing has to be perfect here. These are just going for screws. Alright, since I don't have a lot of stuff with this, so we're just going to hold this by hand. Such a small bit, shouldn't matter. Go ahead and put a little oil down. Or a lot. So as you can see, I'm using a piece of wood, sacrificial piece of wood here. That way I don't go into my milling table. Alright, now we switched out. We're going to go ahead and drill out one side of each one of these pieces. And I don't like doing this so close to the milling table, but I'm just going to make sure I only go down through the top half. And so now, we're going to go one more size up. And now it fits through like it should. So now we got to go ahead and countersink those holes. Alright, so these are the screws or the bolts I'm actually going to use. They are just barely, if you can see this, they are barely sticking out there, which means they're really barely actually gripping in the hole. But luckily this thing doesn't require that much force or holding force or anything like that. It's just got to be there to hold the tool up. So these should be just fine. So we just barely have to countersink them. I'm going to just use, since I don't have any parallels yet, hint hint, if anybody wants to give me any, I'd love to have some. I'm going to go ahead and use this block of wood. Should work anyway, we're not being that precise. We'll go ahead and just touch them just a little bit. Now let's see what it looks like. Oh yeah, perfectly flat, so should be good to go. Now let's see what else we got to do. Alright, just a quick side note. Drilling through these and then also doing the counter bore, left burrs on the inside. So I just took a small little file, and these are actually, what does this say? Needle file set that I got at Harbor Freight. They only cost like $2 or $3, something like that, but it was perfect for trying to get down in there and actually file those burrs flat again. So, and the reason why I want them flat is that way they'll slide on here like they're supposed to. I also went ahead and deburred all these holes that I drilled just to make sure that they weren't going to be catching on anything. So now what we got to do is mount them up like so. The bottom one, I'm actually going to have to take this part back off of here. That way I can go ahead and screw it to it on here. But it's not going to be that big of a deal. As you can see, it'll just go on like so. And we do need to space them out just a little bit. I've got some, and this I'll use here in a minute, but this is a, well, it looks like it's about 3/16 flat bar or something like that. It was just scrap. But I'm going to space it off, and I think, yeah, I'll probably have to go ahead and grind on the bottom piece. As you can see, this kind of makes a weird, well, I don't know what you'd call it. It's kind of a U shape, but the top flange right there that comes off of it, I'm going to have to go ahead and take off whichever one goes on the bottom. I'm going to have to take that off on the one side. That way it can slide freely past here. So yeah, as I screw these down, I'm just going to put spacers back behind it. That way that amount of space right there should allow, not so much for the top one, but more so for the bottom one, it should allow the thickness of this to go through it. That way it won't be hanging up on the back side of here. So we'll go ahead and space these and drill them in, take the bottom off and put the other one on, and then we'll work on the rest. I went ahead off camera and ground that off of there. And now you can see, if we use this one, it goes down, of course hits there. Now that we've ground that lip off of there, now it can go down and go all the way past. So, no big deal. The top one we don't have to worry about that because there's nothing there. So, we just have to keep them straight from now on. So now we got to put the base back on. Alright, so as you can see, what my idea is, or what my plan is with this, is to go ahead and put these on either side and attach something over here on the side so that, basically so that everything can mount on this side. The lips on here, again, are a little bit of an issue. Got something, that's what these little, well, they're just scraps. That's what those are going to be for. But that'll give me something to where I can actually screw this into whatever it is I'm putting on the other side of here, and then go ahead and mount this. Go ahead and screw these bolts in through here, and that'll attach the two, or the three, however you look at it. So what we need to do now is go ahead and take these and drill and tap some holes in here so that our flatheads can go through. Here I'm just marking the holes. Marking the centers of the holes. I don't have any transfer punches here, not at the moment. And we'll go ahead and punch those, and then go ahead and drill them. And then go ahead and tap them. And punch a divot in here so we can get this drilled and tapped. I'm going to use 1032 screws, 1032 bolts. So, for those wondering, the drill size for that is a 21, and I think I have a 21. It looks like it's going to work either way, and then go ahead and tap it for 1032. Put us a little dab of oil on here. And a smart man would do this over in the drill press, but I'm not that smart. I'll go ahead and move up to the 21. And this is pretty soft metal, so I don't think this is going to be an issue. I'm going to go ahead and use my drill. Probably be best to hand tap this, but this will be a lot faster, and like I said, it's pretty soft. There we go, there's one. Alright, so off camera I went ahead and fitted these bolts through here. Everything seems to be going through just fine, and they're flat and not dragging, so that's great. All I got to do is take them back off, and I'm actually going to mark the orientation of this bar because these holes are fit for this piece, and the other piece may be a little bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and mark it, that way I know it goes back on this one, and then all we have to do is drill our holes through here so that we can mount that bar to whatever else we need to. I'm also going to have to cut off these screws, so I'm going to go mark those and cut them off to length. Actually, I think it's going to make it much easier if I just go ahead and put this back on here and grind it off with a grinder. Then I don't have to worry about the threads taking my mark off of there, because I think it did and I don't want to guess. Alright, new day, let's get back at it. So, now that we've got what we're, well, as you can see, I ground off all those screws, bolts, so now everything should work good for that. But now we got to actually start working on the handle portion of this. So we put both of these in place. We'll go ahead and measure and see about the length that we need it to be. And here it looks like 7 inches will work just fine. So we're going to go ahead and cut a piece 7 inches. I'm actually going to use this. A buddy of mine gave this to me. He didn't need it anymore, but I think it's supposed to be used for steps. So in the nature of all this, we're going with recycled stuff, and this should work. So far everything I've gotten here has been recycled from something. All the screws, everything, except for possibly those flathead bolts, but other than that, everything else has been recycled, and hopefully we can do the rest of it with recycled stuff too. So go ahead and cut a 7-inch piece of this and see where we go. So you saw how I cut out both sides of this. I wanted to utilize this hole. It was already there anyway, so we might as well go ahead and use it. That's actually going to be for our bolt that goes through here to mount the hinging portion of this. I did keep, there's this little groove or whatever that's on here that would typically go for on your step. I guess it would go up against it like that. We're actually going to use that too, so that when this thing goes back up, hopefully it goes back up in the in 90 degrees. It won't go beyond that, because we're going to try to spring load this. So now we got to attach this piece to here. First though, we're going to go ahead and counterbore this hole, and what that's going to allow me to do is counterbore or sink this this nut. This is a nylock nut. It's going to sink that in there, and hopefully that'll kind of lock it in place. If not, we'll have to put some I don't know, maybe epoxy or something in there to finish it up. But what I'm going to try to do is on this bolt here that I've got a thrust bearing that I actually recycled or took off of I believe it was a treadmill. It actually had the handles that you could go back and forth with. Here's one right here, and that allowed you to tighten it up so that you could actually get some pressure on there and give you a workout for your arms. I thought they might be useful for something, and sure enough, I think I'm going to use them for this. You could just use washers in there if you wanted to. A little bit of oil would help out too, but I'm going to try to recycle those thrust bearings. So let's go ahead and counterbore this first. Alright, so measuring the flats on the bolt gives us a little over, it's like 0.557, so it's a little over a ½ inch. I'm going to go ahead and use a 9/16 bit, and hopefully we can drill it just a little bit and then press the bolt in there. So I've marked out about the thickness of the bolt. We'll go ahead and drill that deep. Now let's see if it wants to start. Just barely. So hopefully we'll put a washer on that, and we'll go ahead and pry it basically. We'll twist it down until that goes in. Then we'll take our bolt back out. It's going in. Just keep going until we get it flush. Or until we split the wood, one of the two. And that looks pretty flush to me. Let's see if our bolt comes back out without taking the nut with it. There we go. Now it's stuck in there. Seems to stay pretty well, so should be good to go. Now we got to attach this. So with these, we need to take them back off. These plates that I put on here, take them back off, and then go ahead and probably just attach the top one, mark the bottom one, and then go ahead and attach it. But we do have to drill some holes through it so we can screw it to this. And there's no measuring to this. It's just going to mount it to the wood. We do want to get it as spread out as possible. I was thinking about 3, but I think 2 will work. So we're going to use a 3/16 drill. That should get through it. Alright, let's put a little dab of oil. Go to town. Alright, now we're going to countersink them. Little dab of oil. Let's see how well that worked. And a little bit further. There we go. Now we just go do the same thing with the other one. Alright, so I'll put this one back together, put it up there, eyeball this thing, get it straight up and down, and hopefully even between the two. And I'm going to go ahead and clamp this to it, and then mark it. And for those following at home, this actually would probably be a lot easier if I didn't have those spacers. Just grind off, like I did with this bottom one, just grind off that part that juts out, and that way you could just drive through with the screws and go ahead and screw them to the wood. But we're going to go ahead and go with this since that's the way I did it. There may be a chance I may modify this thing later anyway. So we're just going to mark where it goes on the top, take it back off, and go ahead and screw this piece together to the wood. This, we just go ahead and put it to our line. And we're going to pre-drill the hole. And let's screw it together. And now we put it back on the piece up top. So I put this up here and realized that the lip that was coming off of here was actually hitting these screws on top. So I went ahead and ground that off camera. Now it seems to go through there without bothering anything. So now we just got to fit our other one on the bottom, put it in place, and go ahead and mark our line on it so that we can put our other screws in. And take this back apart so I can put our screws through. Let's pre-drill our holes. I actually made this a little bit taller so that hopefully we don't have an issue with too much friction being too tight on there. Let's put in our next two screws, put this thing back together, and see how she slides. Most likely what I'll do here before too long is actually put a screw, just drill a screw through there, probably like a sheet metal screw, something to keep this from sliding off the end. And I'll probably leave the one in the front. That way if I need to I can always just take it off. I just don't want it to go all the way off the end back here. Alright, so we're going to use the same piece of wood, and we're going to actually cut out a 45 on it, and we'll mark it somewhere up here and then down here so that we know the angle we need, and we'll go ahead and cut that off. We're going to do two things now. I'm going to put this up here like so, and we're going to mark, basically we're going to mark from the hole, the very top of the hole, which is going to be the pivot point, and we're going to mark that because what we have to do is we have to shave off this lip that's on the bottom. And we could use a router. I'm probably just going to use a chisel and go ahead and shave all that off, because this actually needs to pass by it as it goes down. The other thing we need to do is go ahead and mark our center hole, or mark our hole. So we could actually do that now. Take it off, place it on here just like so, where we want it to stop, and go ahead and mark it. Again, a transfer punch would be nice. But that does a pretty good job anyway. So those two things, I'm going to go ahead and drill that and go ahead and shave this off. Alright, so I've put this up here and I've tried test fitting it, and it looks like it's going to work just fine. My only problem is that I have this lip for one, and then two, I have my bolt's not long enough, so I'm actually going to have to counterbore this a little further. I use the Dremel tool and just marked around the washer there, but I'm actually going to have to go a little bit further so that I can actually get this to bite into, or to get my bolt to actually go into all the way to the nut. So I'm going to keep doing that with the Dremel tool, and just in case you're wondering, I'm actually using just a little a burr bit like that, with one that has a straight end on the end, so I can kind of use it like a router in a way. But yeah, I'm just going to make that a little deeper. Alright, so there we go. It swings up, hits the stop up here, comes back down, can make our cut. So I think at this point we need to go ahead and cut this out. I'm going to go ahead and make it extra long for now. I'll cut it off somewhere around here, and that way hopefully we have enough room to go ahead and put a handle in there also. And of course we still have to put our thrust bearing back behind, in between these two boards. That way this thing slides up and down freely. But let's go ahead and cut it off. I'm going to go with somewhere probably about, I don't know, maybe 18 inches or something like that, just so I don't have so much board here, and I can play with the numbers as I go. Alright, so I've made enough of a mess for today. As you can see, we've got our slide action going here. We've got our up and down motion going here. Actually I have the thrust bearing in here, and it's bolted in, so that works well. It stops at the top like it should, and eventually we're going to have that to where the spring will hold it there. And it also stops at the bottom, which is actually pretty good too. So next thing we got to do, of course, is go ahead and mount this so that it will be able to cut, and we'll probably make a handle, and we'll put the springs on here so that this is all working right. So I think this video is long enough as it is. So we're going to go ahead and make a part 3 so we can do all those things right there. and then after that we'll test it out and see how well it works, and see what else we may need to do to it to make it a little better. So as always, I appreciate you guys watching, and we'll see you next time.